why you made the documentary. Why should people see it? What does it tell us about today's gun culture in the United States?
Yeah. So, I mean, the reason why I would encourage people to see the film is because it'll really fundamentally change the way you see the gun debate in this country. For the past 30 some odd years, the NRA has really dictated the narrative on this quote unquote gun debate in this country. And what we learned in making the film is that the NRA really only represents 5% of gun owners. So there's a huge silent majority of gun owners that aren't being represented by the NRA. And what the film does is we follow a group of survivors, both from mass shootings, but also from urban violence. And we look at the film through this personal lens, but also through a historical and political lens to try to find out and unpack the issue and find out how we ended up in a country where there's a public mass shooting on average every 64 days. I mean, this is triple the rate prior to 2011. So we wanted to see how we got there. And the things that we found out were, really incredibly disturbing, but also enlightening, and there's reasons to be hopeful. But I think it really arms people with, some fundamental truths that really can't be disputed. And it's important to note that, a lot of the gun lobby right now wants to describe the film as anti-gun, but we feature gun owners, we feature, and we also never contest the idea that you have a constitutional right to own a gun. So we really want to take that argument off the table. This isn't an anti-gun film, it's an anti-gun violence film. And, I really hope people will watch it because this is certainly a hot topic right now. And I think it will give people a really good primer on the subject.
So as you know, Katie Couric, who's in your film, has apologized for her word, misleading edits made to an interview with the Virginia Citizens Defense League in which part of the raw video shows that there wasn't this dead silence after they were asked the question, is there no background checks for gun purchases? How do you prevent felons or terrorists from purchasing a gun? Why did you edit that out, and does that negatively affect the integrity of the movie?
No, it doesn't negatively affect the integrity of the film. I mean, I think that it's interesting that the gun lobby has chosen to focus on what's not in the film versus what is in the film. Because if they did focus on what was in the film, it would threaten their livelihood. And it's really textbook gun lobby intimidation tactics. They're trying to divert everyone's attention. If you look closely at the things that they're arguing for, they haven't attacked anything within the film, right? They attack this silence. And to explain the silence to the people, so we profile this group called the Virginia Citizens Defense League, and they are featured prominently in the film. And they express their views repeatedly. I mean, in just moments earlier before this question that's being called into question, they mention how they feel on background checks, which they laugh and they say, you should ask better. Does anyone here think we should have such a thing? So their views are clearly known. So, I certainly appreciate and see where they're coming from, but, I think even they would have to admit that they got a really fair shake in the film, and their answer to this particular question had been covered in another part of the film. And it wasn't done to make them look bad. It was done to make sure that the audience had a moment to process this question. And the question is what we need to be focused on here, which is how do you prevent felons or terrorists from purchasing a gun? Currently in our country, if you are on the terror watch list, you cannot board a plane, but you can buy a gun. This is the law. And between 2000 and 2014, more than 2,000 terror suspects legally purchased guns in the United States. This is the issue we need to be focusing on. But, the NRA is using these diversion tactics. We cover this in the film. It really is textbook gun lobby tactics. And, I really have faith in the American public that they'll see through it, and the merits of the film speak for themselves.
Stephanie, as you may be aware, here in Missouri, the NRA is very powerful in our legislature with both Republicans and Democrats. we have a bill before our Democratic governor that was passed with a Republican veto-proof majority that would make Missouri a state in which you don't even need a permit to conceal carry anymore, and a variety of other things. You mentioned that you think watching the movie you end up with sort of a hopeful attitude. How can we be hopeful when we have legislatures that are doing everything they can to weaken gun laws rather than strengthen them?
I'm so glad you asked this. Okay, so what we found in making the film is that the NRA's power lies, not that they have more money than the gun safety side, but it lies in their membership. And as I told you, they really represent a very, very small minority of gun owners. And within that even smaller minority is a fringe of extremists that are single-issue voters. The only thing they will vote on is gun safety. So when bills like the one you mentioned come up, they will inundate your legislators. They will call 10 times a day, they will show up, and they will write. So what we see here is that the power lies really with the people, because if those of us that believe that some very standard common sense gun safety measures are important, we need to call. We need to make the calls. We need to show up. We need to write letters. We're all busy, but this is something that matters, right? Our kids are no longer safe going to their schools. We're not safe in church or in movie theaters. We need to make this a priority in the same way that the extreme fringe of gun owners have made it a priority for them. They are very small in numbers. 93% of Americans support universal background checks. We just aren't as mobilized up until now. And you'll see the difference that it makes. And, I'm witnessing it now. You should see my Twitter feed.
I watched it. I watched it last night. I went and looked, and I saw that they're accusing you of breaking federal gun law now.
Yes.
In the making of your movie.
Yes, they're accusing, and it's so funny because these are the people that want fewer laws and fewer regulation, and they are dumbfounded by the fact that we actually. I have a producer, and he was from Colorado. He went to Arizona. He bought an AR-15, and he bought a Smith & Wesson, the same Smith & Wesson that was used in the Aurora Theater shooting, from a private seller without a background check. And this is perfectly legal in the state of Arizona. The accusation is that it happens all the time,
yeah.
and they're saying this is illegal, and this is the point of the film, right? Is that no, this is legal. This is 40% of guns in this country are purchased without a background check. So one part of me was like, well, I'm glad you're so outraged that this was legal, because maybe we can finally agree that it shouldn't be this easy to buy an assault rifle from out of state. I mean, with one of those purchases, they didn't even ask him to see a driver's license. So the bottom line really is that this needs to be a people's movement. The NRA instills fears in its members and its government that the government is coming for their guns. And if we do not let our voices be heard, if you look at my Twitter feed and you just see right, you see that it's 97% trolls coming after me, and then 3% of people who support the film, right? We know that more than 3% of people support the film. It's one of the most downloaded films on iTunes right now. It's just that the gun safety side, up until now, has just not been as vocal.
The trolls,
and so I would really encourage people, the trolls.
They loved it. They loved the trolls. Stephanie, I got to take a break. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today. Stephanie Sotig, director of Under the Gun. You're listening to the Big 550 KTRS.
This is McGraw Live on KPLR 11.2, STLtoday.com, and the Big 550 KTRS.
Ever